The rain had fallen nonstop for 2 days over the small coastal town of Bay. The streets shimmered with the pale reflection of hospital lights, and beneath one of those flickering bulbs sat a 19-year-old girl named Elowen Thorne. Her hair was damp and tangled, her hands trembling as they clutched a small blue blanket, the only thing she had prepared for her newborn son. Inside the hospital, voices murmured and footsteps echoed, but no one would meet her eyes. Hours turned into days. Elowen had given birth prematurely after collapsing at her part-time job at the harbor cafe. She remembered only fragments, doctors shouting, the sting of antiseptic, the sudden silence that followed the cry of her baby. Then, a nurse had come out with downcast eyes. "I'm so sorry," the woman had whispered. "He didn't make it." But Elowen refused to believe it. Her heart screamed that something wasn't right. Every night she returned to the hospital, sitting just outside the maternity ward's metal door, waiting for a miracle. The nurses pitied her at first, but after a week they began to avoid her entirely. Except for one, Marella Dawes. Marella was stern and distant with eyes that seemed too tired for her age. She brought Elowen cups of tea but never stayed long enough to talk. One evening, Elowen noticed Marella trembling as she set down the cup. "He didn't die, did he?" Elowen asked, voice barely audible. Marella froze. The teacup rattled against the saucer. But before Elowen could press further, the nurse turned and walked away. That night, Elowen wept outside the door until sunrise. The hospital lights flickered again and she whispered into the silence, "Please, if you're still out there, just let me see you once." No one came. Years rolled by. Elowen moved away from Bay, trying to build a life. But she never forgot the weight of that small blue blanket or the face of the nurse who couldn't meet her gaze. 30 years later, on a foggy morning, a letter arrived. The envelope was thin, the handwriting fragile, like someone had written it with shaking hands. It was signed, Marella Dawes. "If you are reading this, Elowen, I am not long for this world. There are things I must confess. What you were told that night was not the truth. Please come to Bay Hospital. There is something you deserve to know." Elowen sat at her kitchen table, the letter trembling in her fingers. The words blurred through her tears. For 30 years she had begged the universe for an answer, and now suddenly it was knocking at her door. As she packed her old satchel, the same one she'd carried to the hospital decades earlier, she whispered, "Maybe the truth never dies. It just waits." When she stepped onto the train bound for Bay, she had no idea that what awaited her there would not only change everything she believed, it would rewrite her entire past. But then something unexpected happened. If this story has already touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more emotional true stories, and tell us in the comments, do you believe some truths are meant to find us, no matter how much time has passed? The train slowed as it entered Bay Station, screeching softly against the old rails. Through the mist-covered window, Elowen Thorne could see the faint silhouette of the sea, gray, endless, and hauntingly familiar. It had been 30 years since she last stepped foot in this town, but the air still smelled of salt and rain. As she walked down the narrow platform, her heart pounded like it had that night outside the hospital. She carried only a small suitcase and the letter from Marella Dawes, folded and refolded so many times the paper had begun to tear. Bay Hospital was still there, perched on the hill overlooking the coast. But now its windows were boarded up, its corridors dark. The building had been closed for years, replaced by a modern facility in another town. Elowen hesitated at the entrance, the scent of damp concrete and dust wrapping around her like a ghost. Inside, an elderly janitor turned his flashlight toward her. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, voice echoing down the hall. "I received a letter," Elowen replied softly. "From someone who worked here. Marella Dawes." The man frowned. "Marella?" She was one of the old nurses. "Poor woman. She's at the hospice now. Room 13. Elowen thanked him and left immediately, her steps quickening as if guided by something greater than herself. At the hospice, the nurse on duty led her to a quiet room with soft beeping machines and the faint scent of lavender. On the bed lay a frail woman with silver hair and hollow cheeks. Marella. Her eyes flickered open, cloudy but aware. Elowen. Morella's voice cracked. You came. Elowen's throat tightened. You said you had something to tell me. Tears gathered in Morella's eyes. I've carried this for 3 decades. It was not my decision, but I let it happen. The night your son was born, he didn't die. The room fell silent except for the rhythmic hum of the oxygen machine. Elowen's world tilted. What do you mean? She whispered. He was alive, Morella continued. Weak, yes, but breathing. A doctor named Harland Wexler arranged for the baby to be taken. There was money involved. Adoption, they said. But it wasn't legal. I wanted to tell you, but they threatened me. I was a single mother then. I couldn't lose my job. Elowen covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Where is he now? Morella shook her head. I don't know. But there's one man who might. Dr. Caius Redden. He worked under Wexler back then. After the hospital closed, he kept all the patient archives. He might still have your son's records. Elowen stared at Morella, the woman who had haunted her dreams for half her life. There was pain in her eyes, but also something else. Deep, crushing remorse. Why tell me now? Elowen asked. Because I'm dying, Morella whispered. And I couldn't leave this world without freeing you. Or myself. Forgive me if you can. Elowen took Morella's fragile hand, feeling its coldness. The truth hurts, she said, voice trembling. But silence hurts more. As she left the hospice, the sun was beginning to set over Marin Bay. The sea glowed amber for the first time in years, as if the town itself was exhaling a secret it had kept too long. Elowen looked up at the sky, clutching the letter against her chest. If he's alive, she whispered, I will find him. And for the first time in 30 years, she believed she could. But she didn't yet know. The search for her son would uncover something far darker than she ever imagined. The next morning, Marin Bay lay under a blanket of fog. The sea was calm, but Elowen's heart raced like a storm. She followed Morella's final clue and found an address scrawled on the back of the letter. Dr. Caius Redden, retired physician, residing in Tavern Hill, just outside town. His house stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking the gray ocean. A brass plaque on the door read, C. Redden, M.D., Ret. Elowen hesitated before knocking, clutching her trembling hands together. The door opened slowly to reveal a tall man in his 70s, with white hair, a heavy gaze, and a voice like distant thunder. Yes? My name is Elowen Thorne. I was told you worked at Marin Bay Hospital. I'm looking for answers about my son. He was born there in 1993. Dr. Redden's eyes flickered. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. Then he sighed, motioning her inside. The house smelled of books and sea air. Dust motes floated in the golden light filtering through the curtains. Redden walked to a wooden cabinet and pulled out a thick, worn ledger bound in cracked leather. I shouldn't even have this, he said quietly. But when the hospital shut down, I couldn't throw the records away. Too many ghosts in those pages. He flipped through the book until his fingers stopped at a familiar name. Elowen Thorne. Birth, male child. Condition, premature. 4. 2 pounds. Status, transferred. Elowen's heart stopped. Transferred where? That's the problem, Redden said, leaning closer. There's no record of the receiving facility. No signature. Just this. He handed her a yellowing form with a faint stamp. Confidential private care, adoption pending. And beneath it, a name she had never seen before. Rowan Vale. Her breath caught in her throat. Who is that? I can't say for certain, Redden murmured. But this same name appears on another file, a child adopted by a couple from Windermere, a wealthy district near London. The dates match. The blood type matches. It could be your son. Elowen pressed her hand to her chest. So he's alive. All this time. Redden nodded slowly. If I were you, I'd go to Windermere. Speak to the Vale family. They may not know how their son came to them. But be careful. The people behind these adoptions were powerful, and some of them still are. Outside, the sea roared as if echoing his warning. That night, Elowen checked into a small seaside inn. Sleep wouldn't come. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying Mirella's words, the doctor's weary eyes, the file in her bag. Every part of her wanted to believe she was close, but part of her feared what she might find. What if he doesn't want to know me? She thought. What if he's happier without me? Her doubts warred with her longing. But when she touched the small blue blanket she still carried after all these years, she whispered, "You deserve to know who you are, even if it breaks me." The next morning, Elowen boarded a bus bound for Windermere. The road curved along the cliffs, sunlight piercing through the mist. In the reflection of the window, she caught her own eyes, older, lined with pain, but burning with purpose. Somewhere out there, her son had grown up believing another story. But now, the truth was coming for both of them. And soon, neither of their lives would ever be the same again. The town of Windermere was nothing like Marin. Where Marin smelled of salt and grief, Windermere was polished and proud. All manicured gardens, marble steps, and quiet privilege. Elowen felt like a ghost, drifting through another world. She carried the faded hospital file in her handbag, her fingers tracing the name Rowan Vale again and again as she stood in front of a tall iron gate. Behind it was a grand brick house covered in ivy. Her heart pounded. "He lives here." She hesitated before pressing the intercom. A woman's voice answered, calm but curious. "Yes?" Elowen swallowed hard. "I'm looking for Rowan Vale. I believe I may have known him a long time ago." Moments later, the gate opened with a buzz. A man appeared at the top of the driveway, tall, lean, with dark curls and eyes that held a quiet kindness. He looked around 30. "Rowan, can I help you?" he asked. Elowen's voice trembled. "This will sound strange, but I think I might be your mother." Rowan blinked, confusion flashing across his face. "My mother? There must be some mistake. My parents are—" "Please," she interrupted softly, pulling the yellowed file from her bag. "Just look at this." He hesitated, took the papers and scanned them. His eyes darted across the page. Birth date, hospital name, blood type. Slowly, his expression changed from disbelief to shock. "My birthday? This is the same date," he whispered. "And the hospital? Marin? That's not what I was told." Elowen's tears welled up. "I waited outside that hospital for days, hoping to hold you. They told me you'd died." Rowan sank onto the steps, staring at the papers in silence. "All my life I felt like something was missing," he said. "My adoptive parents were kind, I loved them, but there was always a hole I couldn't explain." He looked up at her, voice trembling. "Are you sure?" "I had nothing else to live for but this truth," she whispered. "And now, seeing you, I know." He reached out, uncertain at first, then took her hand. The contact was electric, years of emptiness collapsing into one fragile, undeniable moment. They sat together for a long time, words failing them both. Finally, Rowan spoke. "You deserve to know everything. I found adoption papers years ago but never questioned them. There's a name here, Dr. Harlan Vexler. My father once mentioned he arranged the process privately." Elowen's chest tightened. "Vexler, that's the man Mirella mentioned." Rowan nodded. "I can get his address. He lives outside London now. But, Elowen, are you sure you want to face him?" Her voice was steady. "He stole 30 years of my life. I can't let him take the rest." That night, Rowan drove her through winding roads, the city lights reflecting in the rearview mirror. Neither spoke much. The silence between them was sacred, a fragile bridge between what was and what could have been. When they finally stopped at an old countryside house, Rowan turned to her. If what he did was illegal, this could get dangerous. Elowen looked at him, her son, grown and brave. The danger was living without the truth. They stepped out of the car together. The air smelled of rain and ash. The door creaked open, and the silhouette of an old man appeared, leaning on a cane. "Dr. Vexler?" Elowen called softly. The man's eyes narrowed. "I was wondering when you'd come," he said, voice cold and sharp. "You should have stayed away from the past." But the past had just opened its door, and there was no turning back. "Doctor." Harland Wexler stood in the dim doorway, his face weathered and eyes pale as stone. The years had not been kind to him, nor to the secrets he had buried. Elowen and Rowan stepped inside cautiously, their shadows stretching long across the cracked floor. The old doctor gestured toward two worn-out chairs. "If you came for apologies, you'll leave disappointed," he said flatly. Elowen's voice was calm, but beneath it pulsed 30 years of restrained fury. "I came for the truth." Wexler leaned back, his breath rasping. "The truth?" He chuckled bitterly. "You wouldn't have survived it back then. The hospital was drowning in debt. Wealthy families offered large sums for newborns, especially those from poor, unwed mothers. I signed the papers. Mirella did what I told her. It kept the hospital alive another year." Rowan's fists clenched. "You sold children?" Wexler looked at him, unflinching. "I gave them lives better than they would have had. Look at you. You grew up comfortable, educated, safe." "Safe?" Elowen's voice cracked. "You stole my son. You made me grieve for a child who was breathing." For the first time, Wexler's confidence faltered. His eyes flicked toward Rowan, the living proof of what he'd done. "You both want me to rot. Fine, but you should know. There were others. Dozens of babies, falsified records, forged signatures. Marin Bay wasn't a hospital. It was a marketplace." Rowan stepped closer, trembling. "You don't deserve peace, but we're going to make sure the truth does." He pulled out his phone and began recording. Wexler didn't resist. Maybe he was too old to care, or maybe, somewhere deep inside, he wanted the weight lifted before death. He spoke for nearly an hour, naming names, places, and every family involved in the illegal adoptions. When it was over, Elowen turned to him quietly. "You took everything from me, but I won't let you take my forgiveness. That stays mine." She stood, tears streaming down her face, and walked out into the dawn. The sky was painted gold and blue, the same colors of the blanket she had held all those years ago. Outside, Rowan joined her. He reached into his coat pocket and unfolded the small piece of cloth Elowen had given him earlier, that same blanket. "I guess it was waiting for me," he said softly. Elowen smiled through her tears. "All this time, I thought I was waiting outside a hospital door. But maybe I was waiting for you to find your way back." Rowan looked at her, eyes glistening. "And you did." In the following weeks, the recording spread. Authorities reopened the Marin Bay case. Families learned the truth about their origins. Some reunions were painful, others joyous. But for the first time in decades, silence gave way to justice. Mirella Dawes passed away before the investigation concluded, but her second letter reached Elowen's hands. Inside was a single sentence written in trembling handwriting. "Forgive yourself, too. You never stopped being a mother." Elowen read it beneath the same coastal light that had once watched her cry. This time she wasn't waiting for someone to open a door. She was walking through it. The sea roared softly below, the waves carrying away years of grief and secrets. Rowan stood beside her, his hand warm in hers. "I used to wonder what my life would have been if things were different," he said. "But now I think, maybe they were always meant to lead me here." Elowen smiled. "The truth can take everything from you," she whispered, "but it also gives you back who you are." The wind lifted her hair, and for the first time in 30 years, Elowen Thorne felt weightless. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in the power of truth and love. Would you forgive someone who kept a secret like this for 30 years? Tell us in the comments below.